The night still breathes along the ground. Ash and silence gather around. I hear the warmth beneath the stone. A quiet fire, not alone. No bells are ringing, no voices rise, just a tremble in the darkened sky. Hey, Malahula skew softly now the morning moves in. Hold the flame, let shadows stay, the light will find its way. Frost still clings to every field, but something stirs the one veiled. Between the dark and coming day, I feel the cold begin to sway. No sudden spark, no blinding flame, just breath and heat that know my name. Hey, Malahula skew softly now the morning moves in. Hold the flame, let shadows stay, the light will find its way. If I listen, I can hear the fire whisper drawing near. Hey, Malahula skew softly now the morning moves in. Hold the flame, let shadows stay, the light will find its way. Still the night, but not the same. I wake beside a living flame. where stone is laid, low and red, not yet arrayed. No call made, no hand drawn near, only warmth that lingers here. Morning stands but does not speak. Day feels young and still feels weak. Still it stays, the quiet cold, neither whole nor gone from soul. Held in earth, in ashen breath, not yet life, and not yet death. Steps are slow upon the ground, sounds are few yet closely found. What will move has not begun. Day is here but not yet run. No will set, no word is sworn, only time that turns to mourn. Still it stays, the quiet cold, neither whole nor gone from soul. Held in earth, in ashen breath, not yet life, and not yet death. All that awaits is not undone. All that rests is not yet done. Still it stays, the quiet cold, neither whole nor gone from soul. Held in earth, in ashen breath, not yet life, and not yet death. Fingen hun langt kist Fui skal hun nå Niran hun solust har du Ni elin hun tom frekru Rud bjayo Snion nung gwithredung hag Gananim gantorum Luin nung dohum dis Marpa There is a place that does not speak, no marked stone, no name to keep. It waits where hands have always known, where fire was set and left alone. Not a shrine, not called by prayer, only care has kept it there. Still the well runs clear and slow, still the roots are deep below. Nothing asks and nothing claims, the place remains the same. Oak and ash lean into ground, holding what was never found. Winter passed it without sound, spring will come the long way round. No word was sworn, no vow was made, only time and use have stayed. Still the well runs clear and slow, still the roots are deep below. Nothing asks and nothing claims, the place remains the same. Those who came did not remain, those who left still knew the way. What was kept was never shown, but everyone was never alone. Still the well runs clear and slow, still the roots are deep below. Nothing asks and nothing claims, the place remains the same. When we turn and walk away, the place does not forget the day. opened or known. I burned in places left alone, not high, not fierce, but drawn to stay. A low red truth beneath the day. I am not the flame you chase, I am what the dark keeps safe. I am the embers of Bridget, held in stone and breath and bone. Not the fire that breaks the night, but the warmth that brings you home. I have seen the winters pass, hands grow slow and moments last, when all the bright fires fall to ash. I keep the heat that does not ask. Call me not with voice or plea, I rise where care remembers me. I am the embers of Bridget, held in stone and breath and bone. Not the fire that breaks the night, but the warmth that brings you home. From hearth to field, from word to word, I move unseen but always heard. Where work is done, where vows are kept, I wake where something still is kept. I am the embers of Bridget, not in blaze but in remain. I do not shout, I do not burn, I stay so you may rise again. When flames are gone and songs are through, I am the fire that waits in you. digits while the morning stays cold and bright in quiet ways. From our sneak lines of distance spread all the roads the fire once led. Kildare, spoken soft and slow. Kildare, where the old paths go. Kildare, no call to stay, only turning us that way. We do not ask, we do not claim. We walk along the listening lane. dun schniachtava Brat baner baweg ach sílich grína krei Quinnialeg lon romalus Cordai feim Ach rei briste ach rei tushach Likun tanal shotri Avrid nachin yegal Slanishin kirchasin jeg gafura Sol sinon islinno Imbuk savrolach foskjun gon chlishach gui Avrid nachin yegal fanin armaska nokt Ishkegik shilal yakayir Fokul bognashan vauhar Vroach idir sel I sel Skilun pin marjatuch Ligdun tulus tiach Kogyal tan ni frägrigen Pachloshim fostorin Evos nadile Evuim nagoihe Tagan anleies gansichen Mer mogluine saligreine Mer sajčece talam flu Kach bron marchlach I molan Kach kloch leila sakre Fostorin Evos naduile Evuim nagoihe Tagan anleies gansichen Lavriun and toslun Niga fokol, niga fred